Okay, last time we started speaking about, about Play-Doh, keeping and having enough of Play-Doh on Pesach. Just in short, last time we talked about it's made from flour and water and a few other ingredients. And last time we talked about maybe it should be considered not royal achila, okay, which is the first approach to it, and how the Chavos Das plays into that. The Chavos Das is a special shita about how you consider something to be not royal achila. Today, we're going to talk mainly about one thing, but first a smaller piece, and that is,
can you change the Play-Doh to get the flour out of it?
You listen to last time's recording and you'll know. So
I'm sorry, I had a meeting for 2.5 hours last.
That's okay. You just listen to the recording. I can't repeat it. Okay. So the question, the second point we have to talk about is, let's say it's not considered nifsal mechila, according to the Chavos Das, let's say it's not nifsal mechila. The question is, should we consider it to be chametz nuksheh? Okay, chametz nuksheh is this in-between state of something that's sort of not edible, and it's also sort of not chametz. Okay, it doesn't fully become chametz the way regular flour and water become chametz. You take flour and water, mix them together, they become regular chametz. Chametz nuksheh is like something that's like hanging there in the middle there, and it's an in-between state. And the din is, at least on the device level, chametz nuksheh you're allowed to keep in Pesach. Okay, so it would seem it would seem that Play-Doh should qualify for that. First of all, because it has the qualification of not being terribly edible, even if you're saying it's not nifsal according to the Chavos Das, but it's not tasty. I mean, this is not regular put together stuff, and doesn't show regular signs of chimetz. And that's helped by the fact that if you watch the recipes, when we spoke yesterday about the patents, read the patents, the recipes go like this. This is how the recipes say: take all the ingredients aside from the water, that's the flour, the salt, and the kerosene, and sometimes they put in 2 other ingredients. Take all those ingredients, blend those ingredients together, and then after they're well blended together, then add the water. In fact, for hot water, I don't know why, whatever you need, you add the water to it. Okay, so the point being that the inedibility, the fact that it's going to be not edible, happens before you add the water. Before the chimetz happens, the salt and the kerosene, which we're guessing are what makes it not edible, are done before.
Is kerosene poisonous?
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, at that percentage, I can't tell you whether it is. It's at a 0.5%. Whether that is, I don't know. But it's not. What I'm saying, it doesn't taste like cookies. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, he's right. It is non-toxic.
It's non-toxic.
Non-toxic. I can't say it's good for you, but it doesn't taste very good. We know the stuff doesn't taste good, but that happens before you put the water into it. So Kenzai will be qualified as nuksheh. The 2 points you just have to make about that are, first of all, is that chametz nuksheh is also midrabanan to keep. So mutter with the rice, but it's also with the rabbanon. So to say that it's mutter because of chametz nuksheh is not really going to save the day for us. Okay, if we would say it's not royal achila, you could keep it. It's 100% mutter to keep it, and you could use it even on Pesach. But to say that it's nuksheh only helps us on the rice level, not on the rabbanon level. Kenzan, even if it's rabbanon, according to some, it's even usher as chametz of Pesach, even though it's a rabbanon. And the second thing is that we're forgetting that you start here. I said to you, well, before you put in the water, it became this funny state, this nuksheh state. We're forgetting that flour itself is safek chametz. Okay, we talked about last year that flour itself is safek chametz because the flour is tempered and makes it a safek chametz itself. So to say we added everything in before we made it into chametz doesn't fully help us because the flour itself, when it walked in the door, was already safek chametz. Okay, let's move on to what we're really here to talk about. Another reason to think that the Play-Doh might be mutter to keep and to use, which we're going to talk about in the Play-Doh, but there's a couple of other examples of exactly the same shaila that come up, other foods, other things that might be mutter for the same reason. And there's like this. The Gemara says, it's brought here in Shulchan Aruch Halacha Tes, Tafshin Beis Halacha Tes, in the same din that says that if food is not going to achila, it's mutter, it gives another din, which is, the Gemara says, kupasar, a block of yeast, of sourdough, so it's pure chametz, Yichdo the yeshiva, you decided that this block of sourdough, you're finished baking for the week, no more baking, you decided you're going to turn it into a stool, just something to sit on. Okay? It's just a big block of inedible stuff. So what are you going to do with it? You decide it's going to be a stool, okay? And you smeared the whole outside of it with tar, okay? So then you're allowed to keep it on Pesach. There's no issur keep it on Pesach. Hagam, that the stuff is 100% pure chametz. Okay, and when Mishmur points out, he says, if you break it apart, if you just peel off the outer layer of tar, the inside is perfectly good sar. It didn't become not royal achila. Maybe a little layer on the outside that was in contact with the tar is not royal achila, but the inside is 100%. I mean, so it's pure chametz. Nothing changed about it. Yet you're allowed to keep it on Pesach, and you're allowed to sit on it. I mean, so you can't eat it, but you could keep it, and you could have enough from it. So what's the reason? Why is it true that Yichdo Yeshiva makes it mutter? So the reason is because really Min HaTorah, there's two ways to get rid of your chametz. One is to do beer, to destroy it. That's one way you do it. And the other way to get rid of your chametz is to be mevatel it. Okay, so you just say, I'm not interested in having, I'm being mevatel the chametz. For me, for the way we say bittul chametz is to say, it's worthless to me. But this is a different form of bittul, which is say, it's not food anymore. I don't consider this thing to be a food anymore. Look what I did. I just turned it into a stool. I don't consider it to be food anymore, and therefore it's not food. It's not usher anymore. It's not, I have chametz.
It's not matter bano.
What?
It's not matter bano.
It is matter bano.
Bittul is not matter bano.
Bittul is not matter bano for a side reason, because when we do the bittul, the thing itself is still chametz. So I can't have enough from someone else's chametz either. So I did bittul by sort of pushing it out of my rishus.
Absolutely.
So I'm having enough from God's chametz. You also not have enough. Here I was mevatel not by saying it's not mine kind of bittul. It's by saying it's not food. If it's not food, then I can have enough from also, just like I can own it. It is mine.
It's more than just bittul.
It's a form of bittul. It's not bittul in the traditional, what we think of bittul, that I'm mevatel by saying it's not mine. I don't have bias over it. It's bittul because it's not food at all. It's not food. It's not considered food. Now, however, usually the din is with the riser that bittul is not enough. Usually the din is you have to do bittul and beer. Midrabanan, you have to do bittul and beer also. In this case, Chazal said you don't have to do beer. You don't have to do beer also. Why? Because the reason why you have to do beer is for two reasons. One is the person might change his mind, and one is maybe he's not sincere. Maybe when the person was battle, he didn't mean it. He's got a whole cabinet full of schnapps. He doesn't really mean it. He really needs to keep it. Okay, but so by doing beer, you obviously you mean it because you destroy it. But in this case, where he was tachai betit, here in this case that he smeared this tar on the outside of it, we know he's serious. I mean, he's showing something very concrete to show that he doesn't want to use it anymore, and he's showing that it sure seems permanent. So we don't have to be choshish. You can do bittul without doing beer, and that's good enough. Okay, that's it. Okay, so just as an aside, if any of you have little kids who make projects. This is tachai betit. You have to do it on all sides of the thing, just as an aside. So if you have a kid who took pieces of pasta and glued them onto a paper to make a gorgeous, I don't know, whatever she thinks it is, some kind of gorgeous project out of it. So there, the glue would be like a tachai betit, and it was yichdo to be part of this picture, but it's not good enough to keep it on Pesach because it has to be tachai betit on all sides. So the glue is only on the side between the noodles and the paper.
They often paint it.
So if you paint it, then you're good also. Good. If you paint it, then you're good also. Okay. So you got to speak to the morals, make sure they do it. Okay. But if you just glue it on, then it has to be tachai betit on all sides. Okay. Fine.
And dip in glue, probably okay. And they dip into glue.
I'm not sure. We actually we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. No, not the chametz. The pasta's chametz.
Right. What about glue?
Okay, the glue's not chametz. Okay. So So the shaila is: should we say that the Play-Doh qualifies for this thing? Why? Because I was miyachid this thing. It's no longer food, even though let's even say it's edible. I decided that this flour and water is not for flour and water anymore. This flour and water is going to be modeling clay. Okay, it's not going to be flour and water. It's not going to be food anymore. So the shaila is where we say, but we're missing. There's one. The other criteria is you have to be tachai betit. Okay, you have to smear it with this tar on the outside. So the shaila is the fact that I did other things to it. The fact that I did other things to it that made it not edible, and I show it on permanent. I'm obviously never going to take this bag and turn this flour and water into a cake. Right? I showed that same sincerity by turning it into Play-Doh, just as sincere as putting tar on the outside of my thing. Could I turn it back? Or maybe I can undo it. I can undo the stool also. But I show that I'm really serious about it. So is it tachai betit, the fact that I did all these other things that turned it into a thing that you sell in a little can that you kids make dogs out of, as the same thing as doing tachai betit onto a stool? Did you want to say something? Okay. So that's a question. So it turns out that the answer to that shaila is machlokes and Shulchan Aruch. Okay? It turns out like this. The Mechaber says in Tafsir Beis Halacha Gimel, he says, Niyoros should dafko some chametz. If you have papers that you bound together with flour, with chametz, okay, when you use the flour as like a binder to hold the papers together, mutal kaim Pesach. You can keep them on Pesach. Why should ain't tzuras hachametz emetis? The tzura of the chametz is not staying in its form that it was in. Okay, what does that mean? The B'Shem explains what he means to say is it's Yichdo Yeshiva. You turn this flour and water. That's what you make the glue out of. You turn this flour and water into a binding material. It's no longer flour and water that you eat, and so it's Yichdo Yeshiva. What about the Tachar B'Tid? Well, it's part of a book now. Okay, it's part of a book, and that's what makes it mutter. That's what Mechaber says. The Ramah says no. The Ramah says v'yesh machmir nirvah b'chutz. There are those who are machmir about this case of niyara shadavka b'chamet if you could see it from the outside. Okay, and the Chazanish explains, the way I understand it, Chazanish explains that what the Mechaber and the Ramah are arguing about is the following point. If you have something that was Tocher B'tit, but it's not something physical, it's not a physical barrier like a piece of tar that's on the outside, but it's some other barrier, I'll call it a psychological barrier. There's something about this that means you'll never eat from it, which is to say, you took the flour and water, you didn't put a covering on it, but the fact that you put it together with a book, people don't take bites out of their book. They don't, obviously you mean it for real, but there's nothing physical that was done to cover over it in a way that makes it, now I'm not going to eat it, to show that. No, nothing like that. It's just the whole way I did it, the whole way I set it up, like the Mechaber says, it's not in the form of food type things anymore. I've done something that shows that I won't eat this thing anymore, so Mechaber holds that's good enough. Tocher B'Tit doesn't have to be physical. There are other ways to make something be, so to speak, Tocher B'Tit, to show that I mean it. And the Ramah says, no, if you could see it, meaning it's not really covered up, then that's not Tocher B'Tit. Tocher B'Tit has to be something physical. Okay, if that's true...
Does it have to be actual or figurative?
Right, correct. So, are we trying to get a goal, or do we have to have something physical? And then, so according to that, then the Play-Doh, L'chayr is an example of that the Play-Doh, there's something that's preventing me from eating it. I mean, something that's bright red, and tastes the way it does, and it comes in little canisters, people don't eat that stuff anymore. But I wasn't talking about it. I didn't put something around it that showed, this is a thing that's not meant for eating anymore. I didn't put something, like in the case of the stool, your mamish coated it with something and put this physical barrier, and over here it is. I just did something that makes it, most people, his children aside, most people don't take bites out of this stuff. You've already done enough to stop like that. So when they
Free school.
Okay. So there are some people who argue on the Ramah. There are some of my friends who argue. The Ramah makes it sound like we pass like the Ramah, which is, we would imagine, we pass like the Ramah. So come out, as we stand right now, is that if you had your Play-Doh, you should give it to your Sephardic neighbor. Okay, because he calls like the Mechaber that it's Yichdo L'Shiva V'Tachar B'Tid. He can keep it over Pesach. You give it to the Sephardim. But you, the Ashkenazi, you can't keep it because Ramah says not to do it.
So let's have something see-through. You should have something see-through.
So that's what I was thinking when he said about putting the glue on, because the glue that they use in kindergarten dries clear. So the question is, if there's something physical there to stop you, I'm not sure what you would say in that case. Then I'd be wondering about that case, because even if he said you dunk into the glue, nothing stopping you. You don't see anything there. Hits you in the face, but there is something, I'm not sure what to say about it.
My mother made a thing, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago. Huge thing about the kaisel made out of beans.
Okay.
And one of the things is barley. It's got kidney beans and barley on it. It's rubbish out, and I said, it's okay, I'll keep it. When this paint was glossed over, it was like, you can see the barley.
Okay, and the simple reason was because barley is not covered. That's the simple, but don't confuse us with that. You know, but okay, so if that would be right, if we're understanding this correctly, that's a shayla. So then there's a few other cases that could have theoretically qualified as Yichdo L'Shiva that are, because of this, I'm not going to. And those are, I have a few cases here. One is something called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, colloidal oatmeal. I don't know if I pronounced that first word correctly. Okay, and that is people who have different sicknesses that make them very itchy. Okay, they have itchiness. If they bathe in bath that has in it this, that's where stuff comes from. Yes, that's where the idea comes from. In this bath with this colloidal oatmeal in it, then it relieves the itchiness. Okay, it relieves itchiness. Okay, well, colloidal oatmeal is really, really finely ground oats. Okay, now if they make it into a bath, they might put in some perfume because you're taking a bath. Hey, it makes. There's nothing else to it except if you put it into your own blender, you get the same stuff. Okay, it does. The idea is that oats have this property. If you put oatmeal in, you're just going to be sitting eating breakfast in the bathtub. But so you have to grind it up, and it turns into a bath, and it does the trick.
But there's nothing else. There's no coating. There's no top of it.
But water. But what there is that if you walked into that part of the store and you bought oatmeal in a pack that said colloidal oatmeal to make it has a little perfume in it also. You bought that for your bath time. Nobody's going to eat that stuff. But nothing really was done to it. Okay? We'll see how that makes enough community toward our cases. But nobody would make breakfast out of that. Nobody puts some I don't know, maple syrup into it and says, I'm ready to eat breakfast from it.
Is it edible, objectively?
Yeah. Except, again, it has a flavor to it. There's nothing, if it's perfume, it's all right. But there's nothing in it. It's just, okay, another example is what's called flour food. Okay, when you buy flowers, fresh flowers in the store, it comes in a little package, and you open the pack up and it has some ingredients in it, and those ingredients are food ingredients.
Is that poison?
No, it's not poison. It's a bunch of food ingredients. I forgot I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. The food ingredients are, I was going to mention this later, I'll say it now. The food ingredients, some people will tell you, if you read those ingredients, they're exactly the same things that they put into soda. Okay, so in Chicago, let's go pop. Okay, we put into pop, into those, that's the same thing. You put in soda has water, pop has seltzer, sugar, flavor, and a few other little stuff, and a few little ingredients. Well, those little ingredients is exactly what they put into the flowers, okay? Yeah, they say something into the flowers. Keeps the flowers going and keeps guys going night sitters. You know, same thing. Okay, so it's the same stuff. So again, nobody opens up a pack of flour food and sticks a lollipop into it, and then dunks it to get sugar onto it. People don't do that.
There's no hummus.
Now, there are ingredients in there that could be chametz. There are ingredients in there that could be chametz. So for our assumption that they could be chametz, it would be this, again, I'm giving you an example of a food where nobody would eat it. It's been designated for some other use. It's not being used as food, but there's nothing stopping you from using that food. There's no barrier, no physical barrier like the tachar b'tit that would stop you. So according to the Mechaber, maybe it would be mutter, maybe. We'll talk about one in a second. But according to the Ramah saying unless there's something mamash like in the way, showing what you did, then that doesn't work. In this case,
is this a double punch and divorce? Know these? I'm just saying.
They know that what?
That these packages that they might give out with their flowers.
Could be chametz. Of course, check it out seriously, of course. And then another one.
I don't know if colloidal oatmeal is the same as the others. Shadavku b'chumetz. I mean, there you actually took the chumetz and somehow you're putting it in a form where it's currently inaccessible.
Right.
The colloidal oatmeal, you could just take it and put it in a spoon and eat it.
Why is the stuff binding the books together? Why is that?
Because you have to undo the host in order to access it. It's mamish. It's just food. You're planning to use it for something else, but it's just.
So you think the case in the book it's a little further away?
There's no layer whatsoever.
Okay, maybe. Okay.
It might be.
Okay, maybe. Last is one more example. I really have two, but one example for now is do you ever get packages and it comes with what's called packing peanuts?
Yeah.
Okay. There's like fluffy stuff in there that keeps. They're called packing peanuts. They keep things from the things from banging around in the back. Bubbles? Yeah. Not the bubbles. They're like little pieces. They're like little. They look like foam pieces. Okay. So the traditional way.
Try to eat it. Didn't taste that.
The traditional way of making it is making it as styrofoam. The people who are more environmentally friendly either put in popcorn. There are people who put in mamish popcorn into it because it does the same thing. It's
Popcorn? Like popcorn?
like popcorn, yeah, if you want to eat it, you could eat it. Real popcorn. But there are also people who make biodegradable packing peanuts. And they make those out of food ingredients. Okay, they look like styrofoam, but they're not made out of styrofoam. They're not made out of petroleum, they're made out of food ingredients. So they make it out of corn or wheat. Okay, that's what they make. So it looks reasonably like the other ones, but they're biodegradable. These are not, the ones that brought your thing to your house are going to stay in the landfill for 1,000 years. And these ones that are biodegradable are going to disappear. So some people who are more environmentally friendly make them biodegradable. Either they put in popcorn, because it does the trick, or they put in, I haven't seen that in a while, or they put in this stuff that's biodegradable stuff. Man, I'm coming. So we have this biodegradable stuff. What is it? What is it? What is the stuff? It's like puffed wheat. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're giving the guy puffed wheat. That's what it is. Puffed in the right shape, or maybe a little bit bigger. But really, I don't think there's much in there aside from just regular food ingredients. But no one's going to eat it, except for some people said they tried it. Most people don't try eating the stuff that comes with their food. Okay, so again, it's a kind of a thing where the food, where it was Yichdo for a job, it was designed to be for some specific purpose, but most people would never even occur to them to eat the stuff that came with their tape recorder or whatever they bought. Okay, so there's one more example, sort of, which is like this. We talked about denatured alcohol. talked about last year, about denatured alcohol. With denatured alcohol, here, it's in a way better than all these cases, because you took alcohol, let's say alcohol of chametz, into it you mix something that makes it taste bad. Okay, so whether it was nifsal mechila, that was our discussion from last year. But let's say it's not considered nifsal mechila. But you've obviously designated it for non-food use. That's the whole point of denaturing it, is now it's going to be used for shampoo or shoe polish or whatever it is. It's obviously for non-food use, and you did that in a way that makes it no one's going to possibly eat this stuff. No one's going to, there's something, but there's nothing stopping you, there's nothing on the outside that makes it look different, that makes you say, don't eat this thing. It looks like every other alcohol, but everybody understands that they're not supposed to eat this thing. Okay, so I thought of a case that the denatured alcohol could be Yichdo Yeshiva in our ongoing crusade, which is, let's say you put the denatured alcohol into mousse, okay? So then maybe then the denatured alcohol we could say it's considered Yichdo, it's Yichdo Yeshiva, that's for sure. The shayla is, could we consider it to be Tocha B'Tid? Because maybe it's now enveloped in mousse, okay? It doesn't have to be enveloped in tar. It's wrapped around with, there's something there that's mamish physical, that's keeping it, making it undesirable and showing that your seriousness by the fact that you wrapped it, instead of wrapping it in tar, you wrapped it in a liquid, okay? But that's the same point. The point is, when it comes out of the bottle, there's something telling you this is not food anymore. Okay? There's something that's visible that tells you this is not food, as opposed to let's say you had perfume. That's just denatured alcohol. Then the thing there is non-physical. Over here, the mousse that's got all the other chazarai in it that tells you, that makes it, sure doesn't look like food anymore, maybe that bothers talking with it. Okay, now, before I get on to my next point, I have to remind you, all the things that I just said to you are only if I was right that it's a machlok between the Mechaber and the Ramah in these cases, we could disagree about some of them. But if we'd be right, then I just mentioned that even though we of course were passing on to Ramah, in this case there's a mitigating factor, which is the chances are that these things are not chametz anyhow. The chances are these things are kidneys in the first place. Not the oatmeal, but the flour food. Chances are the ingredients that are in there are kitnius, citric acid and things like that. Chances are they're kitnius. So whereas we might not want to keep them regular, and we want to be extra careful, but here, if the Mechaber would fit in over here, that the Mechaber holds that's considered Tocha B'Tif Yichdo Yeshiva, then we have an extra reason. I usually wouldn't follow the Mechaber, but here, knowing in our hearts that it's probably not chametz anyhow, might give us more reason to hold like the Mechaber. Not examples for our Play-Doh. The Play-Doh we know is flour and water. But for some of these things that were more that were more questionable, that are more likely to be not chametz, there might be a reason to hold it to Mechaber. All of this, as we've said so far, is with an assumption that it was Yichdo Yeshiva. And we question now whether is it considered Tocha B'Tit. The second qualification is a Tocha B'Tit. But the truth is, there's a question whether it's considered even Yichdo Yeshiva. And that is like this. I'm going to tell you now, Svaras, first from Rabbi Belsky, then from Rabbi Shechter, who said, when you'll hear it, they're very different what they said from each other, but they also have a certain similarity to what they said. And that is like this. The Gemara about Yichdo Yeshiva is the Gemara Pesach. Okay, the same Gemara is brought in Chulin for a different purpose. The Gemara is talking over there, Le'inyan, whether it's Makabel Tum or not. Okay, it's a different din. And the Gemara starts off in the same way as the Gemara says in Pesachim, about it being Tachot, about Yichdo Yeshiva. But the Gemara over there, to explain more in the pratim about why it's not Makabel Tum, says, Kishashimesh, when you use this stool, now that you've been talking to it, when you use it, the Gemara says, Maisa Eit Shimesh. It just functions like a piece of wood. The Gemara is strengthening the idea that it's not a food anymore by saying that in this, the kupas are in the tumah that the Gemara wants to talk about, it's functioning like a piece of wood. It's not functioning as food anymore. And therefore, there's all the more reason why it shouldn't be coming. Okay? We're in the chesh what the Gemara wants to say over there. So Rabbi Belsky said that in order to qualify as Yichdo Yeshiva, it has to be that the new functionality of the item, in this case the sa'ar, is completely unconnected to the food properties of this item. So the sa'ar, the fact that the sa'ar functions as a good stool has nothing to do with that this is sa'ar. If it would have been, potatoes, it would have worked just as fine. The point is it's just a block of food that you could sit on. It's not using any of its food properties to make it a better stool. It's because it's made of sa'ar, instead of being made out of something else, it's not a better stool. A stool is just a block of something for you to sit on. Like the question says, it's functioning as a piece of wood. But if I take, let's say the most extreme example, if I take the oatmeal, the reason why the bath and the oatmeal relieves my itching is because there's some property of oatmeal that makes it suitable to do that trick. If I were to put ground up sawdust, it wouldn't do the trick. If I would have put something else in there, it wouldn't function. So it's the only time it could be considered Yichdo Yeshiva is when it's functioning in a way that has nothing to do with its food properties. It's coming totally as a non-food item, like in the case of kupas or it's functioning like the Gemara says it's a piece of wood. But the oatmeal is not functioning as a piece of wood. The oatmeal is functioning as oatmeal. It's working. I'm not using it for food right now, but it's functioning because it's oatmeal. That's the whole reason why it functions. Why it does what it does. So if that would be true, then all of our cases, included, would not qualify because all those things function because having to do with the properties of what you're using rather than just the genericness of you need something to fill in over here. Okay, but there's a big shaila in this case. Okay, the big question on him is that the case that I told you, the Mechaber says, is Yichdo Yeshiva. He said, aside from the case of Yichdo Yeshiva, he said the case of the book that was held together by dough. Okay, it was a book that was held together by chametz. Why did the guy bind together his book with chametz? Why didn't he put toothpaste onto there? Okay, because toothpaste doesn't hold books together. Okay, what holds books together is flour and water. It makes like a pasty kind of a material that holds things together. So that's using the functionality of the food. I mean, it's not using it in a food way, but it's not using it any less than the Play-Doh is. Play-Doh works as a modeling compound because it has those properties. Flour and water, starch is done in blah, 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 in a special way, has a special compound. It has to do with why you use hot water. You want to make the starches set up in a certain way. Okay, so it does what it has to do. And flour and water also makes good bookbinders. So it seems like you'd see from this case that it doesn't have to not be functioning as food. What about the Gemara says in Chulin? The Gemara in Chulin wasn't talking about the chametz shaboy. The Gemara in Chulin was talking about a different rules, which is having to do with Kabbalah's Tumah. For Kabbalah's Tumah, maybe you have to have Kisha Shimish, Maisa Eitz Shimish. It worked like a piece of wood. But for the chametz part of it, we don't have any qualification. No one says in these dinim that you have to have this thing. It has to not be functioning as a food. And so the fact that it functions as a food shouldn't take away from it. It's not being designated as a food. In the chametz has very much to do with what's in your mind. Just even the way we do bittul, just to say I don't own it anymore, it functions very differently than usual.
I mean, you could distinguish between different cases. You could say in the case of the colloidal oatmeal, for example, you bedafka need the oatmeal in order to get this effect. In the case of the, yash davak b'chametz, so there you could have used chametz, you could have used glue, you could have used any number of different things that could have created the same effect. Maybe you could say the same thing with respect to Play-Doh.
So I have to say, you could have used something else to glue it together, but if you wanted to use, what you did use did take advantage of the fact that flour has certain properties. Had you used corn flour, you wouldn't have made the same glue.
Right, but you don't need bedafka the food. That's the thing. Notice I could distinguish between different cases. There are certain cases where bedafka need the food because of the food properties.
Because the oatmeal, okay, I need it, and the flour. Wait a second, what holds your book together? So it has to do with...
I don't bedafka need the food. There are things
that are totally non-food.
Totally non-food items.
But the way I did do it did take advantage of it being food. It's not like the case of kupas or where your mom uses it as a piece of wood. It has nothing to do with what's in there.
No, but it's closer to say it's like a Maisa Eitz because I didn't need the food, so I didn't need it to be food. It's true, food had this.
And I could have found some cream in the pharmacy that takes care of itching also. There are other ways to deal with itching.
Oh, you don't want this property.
And you don't want to hold your book together.
I'm telling you what it's shloit over acha. I'm telling you what's its name now. Is it called derek now?
Was it Shina
You call it stool now? Then it's the Shnana. It's called oatmeal. You have to get oatmeal.
Okay, so
you're using oatmeal.
So Yossi, okay, Yossi's. So Rabbi Schechter said, you can only say something is considered Yichdo Yeshiva, not because of Rabelski's reason. You can only say Yichdo Yeshiva when the new use that I found for this thing is something that is an existing item. There's such a thing as a stool. I now switch this thing from being food to being a stool. Mm-hmm. Okay, he had other examples of that. I switch it from what it is to something else, an existing item. If I took oatmeal, I didn't make it into something else. All I did was just cut it up. I ground it up and said, now I want to use it for this instead of for this. I didn't turn it into something else. In the case of the flour food, all I did was I took a bunch of ingredients and mix them together. Mix a bunch of ingredients together. If I get an order for soda, for pop, I send it that way. If I get an order for flour, I send it this way. There's nothing I didn't turn it to something else. I just had this mix of ingredients that has many uses for it. That has a bunch of uses for it. You can make breakfast out of the oatmeal, or you can make a bath out of the oatmeal. But it's not, I didn't turn it into something else. That's what, I think what Yossi is saying. That's what he's saying. So I had to turn it to something that he compared it to what we talked about you asked you the year before, we talked about by Kitney Shensteiner, okay, that there are many who hold that Kitney Shensteiner is only mutter if it turns into something else. Okay, if it just changed, it's not a yom. It has to change into something that's known to be mutter. It's something that's known to be mutter. But okay, so now if that's correct, then the oatmeal and the flour food are not going to be okay. And maybe the alcohol is not going to be okay either. But our Play-Doh, according to Rabbi Schechter, would be okay because I didn't just make flour and water. I turned it into modeling compounds that come in 10 other ways also. I potentially turned it into something that's not, I didn't just say, let's have flour and water used a certain way. I did it in the right mix that now it is something else. Now it's not just
dough. What do you mean?
What'd you say?
Flour, water, dough, no.
No, well, okay. So I'm saying it's because I did everything else to it. If you just have dough, it's not going to work. I did other things to it also.
It might dry out, but it's not the same type of properties as Play-Doh.
But so it won't be. If you don't get kerosene, then it's not going to be pliable and velvety. That's what those properties add to it, and it'll dry out. The other thing, I forgot which other thing makes it that it doesn't dry out.
So that's to keep it in whatever pliability state or moist state. But if you take challah dough and you pull out a flour, you make it unsticky. So for those few minutes that you're playing for dough, is there any real difference between Play-Doh and challah dough?
Yeah, they made it not sticky. I mean, all these properties, everything that there is to it, is made into something else. You're saying that something else is the same thing as flour.
Well,
something
that's question. I mean, in the case of a stool, there's an existing item called a stool, and you've made it into a stool. In the case of glue, so there's an existing item known as glue. You've turned it from Makabe's case.
Correct. So that Makabe's case is far as Shatos. You made it something glue, right?
Play-Doh is a little trickier.
Play-Doh, there's silly putty also. I mean, there are other things that function in a similar way.
Comes from,
no, it's not hummus. No. But there are other things that function.
Play-Doh might not be something else. It might be. This is one of the things that you do.
Okay, something you do with dough rather than a new item, as like a stool is a new item. Okay.
Change the spelling a little bit, but
Okay. So we could argue. So, but Rabbi Schechter are both limiting and saying that you can only call something Yichdo Yeshiva. It's not a complete free-for-all that if I decide to use it for something else, it's automatically Yichdo Yeshiva. Rabbi Belsky's way is harder to justify in this din halach gimel here. The din of one of the cases the Mechara gives of Yichdo Yeshiva by making the glue. Rabbi Schechter's case works much better with that because there, like Rabbi said, you turned it into glue. You made it into something, another item, or maybe even turned it into a book. I'm not sure which one you'd call it. You turned it into something else. And Kenzai, for the cases we want to apply it to. I don't know what you say about the packing peanuts. I don't know whether that qualifies as you made it into something else. He didn't want to. He wanted to say that he was talking about packing peanuts. He wanted to say the packing peanuts, you didn't make something else out of it. And in that case, yesh ladon, because packing peanuts is a thing. There is something called packing peanuts. But okay, yesh ladon in that case. But the point they're saying is that, forget it, we originally started talking about, what about the second qualification? Is it tacha b'tit? But now we're finding out that there might be more qualifications to the first part, to the Yichdo Yeshiva part of it, that might negate the use of this kula for all these kind of cases.